we're only going to buy one or two properties, we're not really going to get rich off doing that. We're not going to be able to create that passive income or get that compound growth. G'day guys, Justin Pickout back with you again for another video. Just wanted to quickly touch base to you about, I suppose, a scenario here that's pretty common, where we see investors get started with investing and they only stop at like one or two properties, right? If we're only going to buy one or two properties, we're not really going to get rich off doing that. We're not going to be able to create that passive income or get that compound growth of what we need in our portfolio in order to get us to where we need to be. So buying at one property and stopping, it's not really going to do too much for you in the scheme of things. Obviously, if we're trying to build that long-term wealth and sustainability and that asset base, we need to focus on really building a property portfolio and scaling that up rather than just stopping at one and obviously not getting our equity working for us. So yeah, basically the term bluntly, if we're only going to get one or two properties, it's probably not going to do a great deal. We need to kind of look at getting a larger property portfolio if we're going to get the things to work for us and obviously build that wealth that you need, which everyone's kind of chasing once they exit the workforce there. So, give you an example. One of my mates of mine bought himself a townhouse. Basically, bought it for about $200,000, and rather than trying to get the equity out that he'd made and move forward, he was paying it off really, really quick, trying to pay this property off as soon as possible to try and do those type of things. Now, what we're trying to do here is if we're buying these properties for $200,000 and then they increase to $250,000, $300,000, with that newfound equity that we've created, we want to be pulling that out and then going ahead to go to property number 2, property number 3, and so on. So rather than kind of focusing all the attention of let's try and pay this down as soon as possible and putting all that additional cash into that property, the opportunity cost was missed by that asset increasing in value and cash savings over here. Cash savings could have been used to then go ahead and purchase property number 2 while we were waiting for equity from property number 1. But that was just being sunk into property number 1. And if we had have gone through this process and said, okay, let's get that capital, just let it pay itself, you've got your tenant in there, it's paying itself off, no need to rush that, use that savings to then go ahead and purchase a second property. Now, if we had two properties there that are working for each other, this one goes up by 50,000, or let's say it goes up by 100,000, pull $50,000 worth of equity out, then we use that equity to go on property number 3, whilst we've still got the cash savings over here and kind of waiting for this one to increase over time. And then obviously we can keep going from there. And if we're saving more cash over here, get some equity, we've got property number 3, okay, then we might go ahead and get some equity from property number 3 and property number 2, and then use that to purchase property number 4. May have been able to save a cash deposit over here, so then we've got another small one, been able to go to property number 5 and continue to go from there. And if we kind of put all this money only into one property, we're missing all that opportunity cost. And if we look back on that, if that guy had purchased 5 properties and they all went up $100,000 each off a $200,000 purchase, you can see that there's been a lot more money made. Yes, we've had to pay interest. Yes, we've had to pay lender's mortgage insurance, and let's say it costs 50 or 100 grand. But you've got now 5 properties here that have all kind of increased by 40, 50%. And on that percentage basis, that's the thing that really allows you to move forward. So as you kind of get started, you need to go, okay, I've got property number 1, tenant's in there holding the fort down, doing its thing. All right, I'm going to save for another deposit. Then try and keep going from there. Then we come back and get the equity when we can as well. Then we may use a bit of combination of equity and savings to keep us going forward and obviously gradually build that portfolio. If we just keep going, I'm going to smash this property out in 5 or 10 years time, what the problem is go, yeah, wow, awesome. I paid my property off in 10 years and it doubled, and it went from say 200,000 to 400,000. Fantastic result. But you're not really going to get rich off $300 a week. You know what I mean? Like, it's not going to get you to where you need to be, even when it's all paid off, and you've got your expenses paid for and everything like that. It's not going to be enough. But where it really will make a difference is that, wow, I bought 5 of these $200,000 properties. I had them all on interest only. I never paid a cent off in debt, and wow, look at it in 10 years time, all those 5 properties I bought for 200,000, are now worth 400,000. So my portfolio went from 1 mil to 2 mil, and it was just the markets doing the heavy lifting. You didn't pay a cent off in debt. You didn't scramble and try and pay this one off as quick as you could. You were able to leverage and let those markets, obviously do the heavy lifting for you. And let's just look at that as an example. We had 10 properties at say 300,000, and we held these properties for 10 years. And obviously with inflation and what's happening in Queensland and stuff like that, and I'll use the example of the Brisbane Olympic Games, that if we had 10 properties that we purchased, within 2022, 23, 24, had that portfolio, we hold it for a 10-year period, and those properties go from an average of say 300,000, and hopefully they were kind of worth 600,000 when that comes around in a 10-year period. You had all your loans on interest only, you didn't pay a cent off in debt, and your tenants are in there kind of holding the fort down, yes, there might be some maintenance and stuff along the way, but again, that's obviously where you're getting a solid rental return on your portfolio. It should be covering itself. But if you literally didn't do too much work at all, just the general maintenance, whatever it is, and our portfolio went from 3 mil to 6 mil, and all you did is just hold the properties and had the tenants in there, you've made yourself kind of 3 mil worth of equity, and that's really what you're chasing here. So you can have the positive cash flow, you can buy below the market, obviously that's going to help, but really what we're aiming for is these assets to really perform over time and create that. What you're creating for yourself and your wealth is the equity and the capital gain in all of these assets. So it's not about focusing on paying off the debt as much initially. It's more about, okay, how far can I stretch my capacity in order to get as many assets that are going to perform and give me the returns that I need. Now, once you then say, okay, look, my portfolio went from 3 mil to 6 mil, and I've only got a debt of, let's say 2.5 million, which is still a lot of money, don't get me wrong, but you've made that 3 million. So you might go, let's consolidate now, and I'm going to sell off half the portfolio, I'm going to pay out all the debt. I've got 5 properties with no mortgages, and that was done within 10 years. And you wouldn't do that if you put all your money in that one property. You wouldn't be able to kind of get into that position where you've got that extra equity, which you can redirect back into your portfolio. So that's kind of the big thing that we need. Whether we've got this amount of equity, do you do a development? Do you do granny flats? Do you aggressively pay off debt? Then once you've got that equity, what do you sell that portfolio off and kind of make that passive income for yourself? So really what you're kind of needing is that solid wealth base behind you in order for you to leverage off and to go into bigger and better things. And if your mindset is, I've got to pay this property off as quick as I can, you're going to miss out on all that opportunity cost over here. So it's really important that when you're getting into property, if you're going to go for 1 or 2 properties, you might not get the returns that you need in order for you to kind of create that passive income or whatever it is. So thinking about a larger portfolio is certainly going to be crucial. And I know, if you're doing it by yourself and we've got kids and all those type of things, it's a lot easier said than done. But obviously, trying to increase your income, buying assets that have a strong rental return, and buying in areas that are going to grow, is really going to be helpful. So that's ideally what we want to be looking at, and that's really what we kind of focus on here, when we're helping people build portfolios, is making sure that we're kind of getting them to the lending that they need. And yeah, sometimes the lenders at property number 7, 8, 9 might be a Pepper, or the rates are really expensive, or a Liberty, or whoever it is, but there are means to an end to kind of get you to where you need to be. So, if you're going to cop a higher interest rate of an extra additional 1%, but that property makes you 100, 150, 200,000, worth of equity, that's obviously going to help you build that wealth base that you need. So obviously, really for us, we focus on getting people from the one property and trying to get them to 2, 3, 5, 10, even more, however many it is, and really build that solid wealth base for them. And property is definitely a tool that is a bit more of a, I suppose, to the bank size, if they're going to lend up to 90, 95% in some instances. Obviously, Australians need a roof over their head, and there's obviously areas that are going to be gentrifying and increasing with demand over time. So all we're just trying to do is secure as many of these type of assets as we can, obviously working with your financial scenario and your time frames and your goals, but really get at these many assets as we can over here, let the markets do those heavy lifting, get that capital gains, and then obviously you decide what your long-term goal is on the back end of that. So hopefully that gives you a bit of guidance on what we need to do and why we obviously do this and focus so much on property. It's really obviously to get that equity and then use that to kind of focus in and pitch your next move. So if you have any questions, having issues with servicing, still kind of stuck in the mindset over here, I've got to pay one property off and we're missing out an opportunity cost, feel free to give us a call. More than happy to do strategy calls and things like that as well to really kind of give you that guidance and something a bit more tailored to your scenario in terms of what we do and how we can kind of help you move forward. So really appreciate your time. Hopefully that helps, and look forward to working with you soon. Cheers.